She was only 27 years old when she began to experience incontinence. To prevent her family from seeing, her husband quickly stepped forward and pushed her into the bedroom. Then he locked the door and held her tightly in his arms. The next day, Sujin, as if nothing had happened, softly said when her husband left, "Youngmin, I love you." Hearing this, her husband was momentarily stunned, then forced a faint smile and turned to leave the house. However, at the moment he closed the door, he couldn't help but burst into tears because the wife had just called out the name of her ex-boyfriend. Sujin is a naive, wealthy young lady. That day, after being deceived, losing her money and feeling hurt, she bought a can of drink at a convenience store. After Sujin left, she realized she had not taken the goods and had no choice but to return the way she came. Unexpectedly, she bumped into a shabby-dressed man at the store entrance. Sujin caught sight of the drink in his hand, then looked at the empty cash register and immediately understood. She snatched the drink from the man and drank it all in one gulp, then gracefully turned and left. However, when Sujin was about to take the bus home, she found her wallet had been left at the convenience store. Therefore, she had to return to the convenience store again. When Sujin saw the cashier take out her wallet and drink from under the counter, she realized how foolish her previous actions were. But when she wanted to apologize, the man had already disappeared. Sujin thought it was just a fleeting awkward encounter, never expecting that their fate was far from over. After returning home, Sujin remained gloomy due to a breakup. Her father, who loved his daughter dearly and was a real estate company owner, decided to take her to the construction site to relax. It was there that she saw Cheol-soo once again. Cheol-soo is the subcontractor at this construction site. He is diligent and responsible, but extremely stubborn, bluntly speaking out when things are not to his liking, regardless of who it is. However, his reasoning is always sound, and even the boss has to give him some respect. Although their first meeting was unpleasant and the second was just a quick glance through the car window, Sujin was captivated as if bewitched, deeply imprinting his rough figure in her heart. After some time, because the company needed renovation, Sujin asked her father to help contact a carpenter. Unexpectedly, the person who came was Cheol-soo. When their eyes met, Sujin couldn't help but recall the awkward scene of their first encounter. Feeling uneasy, she immediately turned around and quietly retreated to the corner, leaving her colleague to communicate with him. However, as she watched Cheol-soo leave, Sujin felt she should apologize to him in person. So she went to the vending machine and bought a can of drink. Just as she reached out to grab a drink, Cheol-soo took the lead and took out a drink. As she drank it all in one gulp, Cheol-soo then hiccuped and turned to leave. Unexpectedly, Cheol-soo's actions were exactly like hers. On the way home, Sujin couldn't help but laugh out loud. However, when she snapped out of her laughter and was about to take a taxi home, a motorcycle-riding robber suddenly approached and snatched her handbag. At this moment, Cheol-soo, who had witnessed the entire scene, suddenly pushed open the car door as the robber rode closer. Caught off guard, the robber and his motorcycle flipped in the air and fell heavily to the ground. Surprisingly, the robber was uninjured and quickly got up and fled in a panic. Sujin's bag was not so lucky. It was damaged in the chaos. Fortunately, although Cheol-soo looked rugged on the outside, his hands were skillful, and he soon repaired the handbag to its original condition. Not only that, he personally escorted Sujin home. Because the car door was knocked off and the windshield was severely damaged, the two of them were blown about by the strong wind along the way, attracting many passers-by's attention. The wind grew stronger, nearly blinding them, so Cheol-soo had to wear goggles, and Sujin put on a rather ugly helmet. But she didn't mind at all. Instead, she was full of joy, because she had already fallen for this rugged-looking man with a gentle heart. In the days that followed, Cheol-soo was busy every day at the construction site, while Sujin carefully dressed up after work, pretending to meet Cheol-soo by chance. That evening, she came with 3 friends to a roadside restaurant where Cheol-soo often went. Initially, Sujin thought that with their outstanding looks, the 4 of them would surely catch Cheol-soo's attention, but Cheol-soo never looked up at them. Helpless, Sujin had no choice but to approach and start a conversation. Moreover, Cheol-soo already had a good impression of Sujin, so soon only each other's eyes mattered, completely ignoring their friends beside them. Their friends, being quite perceptive, soon excused themselves and left one after another. Finally, the moment for just the 2 of them arrived. Cheol-soo poured a glass of wine for Sujin and, slightly drunk, said, "If she drinks this glass, they are bound. Otherwise, they will never meet again." Hearing this, Sujin hesitated no longer and drank it all in one gulp. Immediately after, Cheol-soo leaned in and kissed her. Their relationship was sealed at that moment. Like all lovers in love, they began to be inseparable, laughing and fooling around openly on the street, cuddling intimately in a room, playing baseball close together, and relaxing while playing games. After learning that Cheol-soo was about to take the architect exam, Soo-jin, a fashion designer, not only personally sewed him a suit, but also waited from sunrise to sunset on the day of his exam, just to ensure that when Cheol-soo walked out of the exam hall, he could see her waiting figure at first glance and feel the warmth of being waited for. Although Cheol-soo's love is not ostentatious, it is deeply hidden in every act of tolerance and thoughtfulness. When Soo-jin is feeling down, he always patiently comforts her. When she confesses her past with her ex, he may feel jealous, but mostly feels distressed for her past. Moreover, since the second time he saw Soo-jin, Cheol-soo began to quietly carve her face out of wood, but due to shyness, he was always reluctant to let her notice. As their feelings deepened, Soo-jin developed the idea of marriage, but Cheol-soo began to retreat. This was not because Cheol-soo was unwilling to take responsibility, but because he felt the disparity in their social statuses was too great, and worried that even if they impulsively married, once the passion faded and life settled into normalcy, conflicts would inevitably surface. If the ending was destined to be a tragedy, he thought it better to suppress it from the very beginning. However, Soo-jin remained very optimistic, always believing that as long as they loved each other, they could overcome all difficulties and obstacles. Therefore, even though Cheol-soo did not agree, she secretly arranged a meeting with his parents. But faced with a tense atmosphere at the table, she could not withstand the psychological pressure and excused herself to go to the bathroom, leaving the dining table. Left alone, Cheol-soo was subjected to relentless questioning and scrutiny from Soo-jin's parents. When they learned that Cheol-soo had lost his parents at a young age and was raised in an orphanage, Soo-jin's father not only firmly opposed their marriage, but also forbade them from continuing to see each other. Although he had anticipated this outcome, Cheol-soo's heart was still pierced painfully like a red-hot needle. At that moment, a commotion arose outside. When Cheol-soo went out to check, he found Soo-jin had fainted in the heavy rain. Fortunately, after a doctor examined her, it was only a temporary shock caused by excessive nervousness, and she could recover with rest for one night. Seeing Soo-jin wake up and immediately embrace Cheol-soo tightly, and recalling how Cheol-soo had risked the pouring rain last night to send her to the hospital without hesitation, Soo-jin's father changed his attitude and decided to support the couple. Soon, Soo-jin tied up her long hair, put on a wedding dress, and, amidst the blessings of friends and family, married Cheol-soo and started their own little family. Cheol-soo also successfully passed the exam and became a licensed architect. After marriage, their life remained as sweet as ever, and their careers also progressed smoothly. Not only that, Cheol-soo also plans to personally build a house in a picturesque place, hoping that in the future, the two of them can face the sea and enjoy the days when spring blossoms. However, fate is unpredictable. One day, Cheol-soo's mother, a gambler whom he hasn't seen for years, suddenly appears and demands money from him. It turns out that Cheol-soo's parents are not deceased. He was abandoned at a young age and, lacking the protection of elders, has endured humiliation and reproach since childhood. He has an extreme lack of security and holds a deep pessimism about intimate relationships. If he had not met Soo-jin, he might have spent his entire life curled up in a self-enclosed shell. To resolve the estrangement between mother and son, Soo-jin advises Cheol-soo to let go of his resentment and use the funds originally planned for building the house to pay off his mother's debts. Otherwise, even if they move into a new home, he would still find it hard to find peace within. However, Cheol-soo, driven by anger, not only rejects this proposal, but also breaks a glass cup with his bare hands in front of Soo-jin. Despite being deeply shocked, Soo-jin remains calm and walks slowly to Cheol-soo. She gently wipes the blood from his hand and earnestly says she understands that forgiveness is not easy to achieve, and she knows that Cheol-soo must have endured great pain. However, a person's heart has limited capacity. If it is filled with resentment, how can one feel the warmth of love? Soo-jin is not asking Cheol-soo to forgive others. She sincerely hopes he can truly let go of the past, leave hatred behind, and walk towards the future with her. Feeling the deep love, Cheol-soo finally adopts Soo-jin's suggestion, using all his savings to pay off his mother's gambling debts, which plunges both of them into complete bankruptcy. But Soo-jin sees no regret in this. Instead, she comforts the guilt-ridden Cheol-soo with humor. Cheol-soo silently vows in his heart to protect his beloved for the rest of his life. However, fate seems unwilling to let this troubled couple go, setting up a cruel joke for them. Recently, Soo-jin has repeatedly found herself losing her way. Friends joke that it might be due to exhaustion at night, but they do not know that Soo-jin is gradually slipping into the depths of her destiny. One night, she arrives home and is bewildered, unable to understand why she is there, until she carefully opens the door and sees the familiar furnishings inside and the man she loves most. A look of relief finally appears on her face. To uncover the truth, Soo-jin goes to the hospital for an examination the next day. The diagnosis, however, makes the doctor speak hesitantly, as if in disbelief or unable to say it plainly. It turns out that 27-year-old Soo-jin has Alzheimer's disease. This disease cannot be cured through surgery. Only medication can alleviate the symptoms. However, as the disease progresses, patients will gradually lose their memory and even their basic self-care abilities. This sudden and devastating news plunges Soo-jin into deep despair. Even though she was emotionally shattered and helpless inside, she still did not intend to tell her family about her illness, because she was not psychologically prepared and she did not know what the future held. To avoid losing her way outside and to spend more time with Cheol-soo while she was sober, Soo-jin decided to quit her job and stay at home all day. Moreover, to not forget her beloved, she drew Cheol-soo's image on her notebook every day and gazed at it for a long time. However, paper cannot hide fire, let alone Cheol-soo's care for Soo-jin, which was far beyond what ordinary people could do. In fact, from the night Soo-jin returned home from the hospital, Cheol-soo had noticed the sadness behind her smile, but he did not ask directly about the reason. Instead, after dinner, he held her tightly in his arms and silently comforted her. When Soo-jin suddenly proposed to resign, Cheol-soo thought she was feeling down due to work difficulties, so he immediately comforted his wife, saying that if she didn't want to work, she didn't have to. He could earn enough to support the family alone. Furthermore, to cheer Soo-jin up, Cheol-soo even deliberately let her win when playing cards for the first time. However, at that moment, Soo-jin was thinking that perhaps there would be no more such sweet moments in the future, and without even looking at the cards, she quietly went to the bathroom to cry, so she did not notice Cheol-soo's intentions. Although Cheol-soo had sensed something was wrong at that time, he did not ask immediately, but made a funny face before work the next day to cheer Soo-jin up. He originally thought that Soo-jin was an adult, and if she was unwilling to mention certain things, he should not force her. However, that day, when he happily planned to show off his heartfelt lunch to his colleagues, he found that both lunchboxes were filled with only rice. But he clearly remembered that in the morning, he had smelled the aroma of Soo-jin cooking. Suddenly, an uneasy feeling surged in Cheol-soo's heart. He immediately rushed to the hospital, and after learning the truth, he lost control of his emotions, pushing the doctor against the bookshelf, as if that could erase the fact he just heard. Until the nurse, who had heard the commotion, shouted that the doctor's wife had died from this disease. He finally released his grip in despair. Meanwhile, Soo-jin suddenly received a call from her ex-boyfriend Young-min. It turned out that Young-min, who had been transferred to work out of town earlier, had suddenly been transferred back. Young-min thought Soo-jin's resignation was to avoid working with him, so he called to ask. Not wanting to entangle further and needing to handle her resignation procedures, Soo-jin decided to go to the company. But shortly after leaving, she felt dizzy and even forgot how to operate her phone. Fortunately, a security guard nearby noticed her confused and helpless state among the crowd. However, when the security guard asked about her destination, Soo-jin vaguely said she did not know. Just as the security guard was at a loss, Young-min approached her. The moment Young-min was seen, a smile immediately appeared on Soo-jin's face. She seemed to forget Young-min's past betrayal, as if the two were still in love. But after a moment, she regained her clarity and hurriedly left. The doctor once said that Soo-jin's condition was very similar to his wife's before her passing, more complicated than typical Alzheimer's patients. She was not only sometimes clear and sometimes confused, but her memory loss also began to trace back from recent experiences. This means that Soo-jin would forget Cheol-soo first and then gradually forget Young-min. And once such symptoms appear, it often indicates that the condition has entered the middle or late stage. After leaving the hospital, Cheol-soo immediately called Soo-jin, but he was answered by a stranger's voice. Sensing something was wrong, Cheol-soo immediately searched the streets for Soo-jin's whereabouts. Until nightfall, with the city lights just coming on, he finally saw Soo-jin's helpless and pained silhouette by the baseball field they often visited. After learning that Cheol-soo had understood the truth, Soo-jin tearfully said that her mind was like having an eraser, which could erase all her memories of Cheol-soo at any time. At that moment, she would completely forget Cheol-soo, even forget who she was, and her love for Cheol-soo would disappear along with it. Therefore, rather than suffering in the future, it was better to part ways now. Although every word carried a sense of farewell, Cheol-soo understood that this was actually Soo-jin's inner fear and anxiety. So Cheol-soo firmly promised to always be by Soo-jin's side. If Soo-jin forgot him, he would help her recall the past. If Soo-jin ultimately could not remember, they would start anew every day as if it were their first love. Thus, the two comforted each other amidst collapse and tears, regaining the courage to continue forward. Afterward, to prevent Soo-jin from having an accident, Cheol-soo not only hung a loss prevention tag on her chest, but also posted reminder notes all over the house. However, even so, an accident still happened. One morning, after seeing Cheol-soo off to work, Soo-jin was visited uninvited by Young-min. At this moment, Soo-jin once again fell into a state of unconsciousness and happily welcomed him inside. While the two were having an intimate conversation in the room, Cheol-soo suddenly returned home. Witnessing the most unwelcome scene, Cheol-soo immediately punched Young-min in the face. However, for Soo-jin at this moment, Young-min, who was hit, was her lover, so she hurriedly stepped forward to stop Cheol-soo. despite holding a kitchen knife, and accidentally cut Cheol-Su's arm. That Cheol-Su was again in pain and anger, his emotions becoming more intense. He then dragged Yang-min outside the house and, regardless of everything, kept punching Yang-min in the face. Just as Yang-min was nearly beaten to death, Soo-jin, who had come out, suddenly fainted on the ground. This chaotic scene was also seen by Soo-jin's parents, who had come to visit. After learning that their daughter was suffering from Alzheimer's disease, Soo-jin's father advised Cheol-Su to consider divorce. He knew how tormenting the disease could be in its later stages. Even biological parents might not have the patience to care for someone long-term, let alone Cheol-Su, who was still young and should not waste his prime life on a patient who was about to lose all memories and become completely dependent. But Cheol-Su still insisted on his choice. At this moment, Soo-jin, who had regained consciousness, came out of the inner room, but due to her worsening condition, she was unable to control her excretion. Seeing this, Cheol-Su helped her back to the bedroom and then wiped her. Soo-jin, however, like a puppet that had lost consciousness, dumbly pointed at Cheol-Su's arm and vaguely asked why it was injured. At this moment, her mother, who was blocking the door outside, was desperately shouting Soo-jin's name. While inside the bedroom, Cheol-Su was also holding back his sobs. After sending off her parents-in-law, Cheol-Su went to the basement, hurriedly crafted a model of a house overnight, and showed it to Soo-jin the next day. He hoped that while Soo-jin still had some awareness, he could design their future home according to her preferences. This house was supposed to be the home they built when they first married, but an unforeseen event caused Cheol-Su to lose all his fortune. At that time, Cheol-Su thought that at least there was still time, enough for him to rebuild his wealth. But now, he had little time left. Soo-jin had forgotten his existence, and her heart only harbored affection for Yang-min. Although he was mentally prepared, when Soo-jin looked into Cheol-Su's eyes and called out Yang-min's name with deep affection, saying, "I like you," Cheol-Su finally could not hold back his tears. Moreover, a doubt arose in Cheol-Su's heart. Was the person Soo-jin loved the most actually Cheol-Su himself or Yang-min? And he would soon find out the answer. That night, when Cheol-Su finished work and returned home, he found the room empty, with only a folded farewell letter quietly placed on the table. Through the sticky notes and photos in the room, Soo-jin recalled the moments she shared with Cheol-Su. She remembered their first accidental encounter at the convenience store, their first kiss on the street, their becoming legally married, Cheol-Su's endless love for her, and also the moment in the morning when Soo-jin called his name wrong. Since falling ill, Soo-jin's greatest fear has been hurting Cheol-Su, yet now she has hurt him so deeply emotionally. She cannot accept such an event happening again. Just thinking about it makes her painfully almost unable to breathe. So, while she was still conscious, Soo-jin picked up a pen and wrote this farewell letter. Sorry, her dearest Cheol-Su. When he reads this letter, will he shed tears for her? She doesn't want to see him sad, doesn't want to see him cry, only wishes him happiness and joy. But now, she can only bring him pain. Cheol-Su, please, don't misunderstand. The one she loves, thinks of, and misses in her heart has always been only him. She longs for him to see her heart, and also longs to tell him over and over again how much she loves him while she can still remember him. She loves only him, never thought of forgetting him. Can he feel her sincerity? Because of forgetting, she met him, and because of forgetting, she had to leave him. He is the most brilliant page in her life. She is grateful to the heavens for bringing him into her life. And she finally understands. She doesn't need to deliberately remember him, because he has long since merged into her life. Her smile, her every gesture, every move, all bear his shadow. Even if one day she completely forgets him, no force in this world can truly separate them. He has never said he loved her, but she knows his love for her is as deep as her love for him. Finally, she hopes he can go meet her father. However, when Cheol-Su saw the other person, he realized that what awaited him was a divorce agreement. Cheol-Su unhesitatingly tore the agreement into two halves. Soo-jin's father couldn't understand why he was so stubborn. After experiencing hardships in the first half of his life, why would he want to sink the second half into the mud as well? However, Cheol-Su frankly admitted that it was Soo-jin who gave him happiness, helping him emerge from his past gloom. It was Soo-jin who filled the void in his life. It was Soo-jin who made up for the love he once lacked. If he lost Soo-jin, his life would also lose its meaning. Because no one knew where Soo-jin was, Cheol-Su went to the police station to report her as missing. During the days waiting for news, he was listless every day, sitting blankly holding Soo-jin's letter, occasionally aimlessly searching for her traces. One day, he met a haggard homeless man at a bus stop. Perhaps seeing Cheol-Su's deep sadness, the homeless man took the opportunity to share some life philosophy with him. Whether it's love or wealth, they are like this cigarette in my hand. Without fire, everything is meaningless. It's better to just discard it. But for Cheol-Su, the fire in his heart had not gone out, so he couldn't give up this love, especially since he still had words he must say to Soo-jin. Perhaps heaven thought that the test given to this couple was enough, and finally bestowed a bit of luck upon them. Just as Cheol-Su was preparing to be away from home for a long time, he suddenly had a whim and opened his mailbox, which he hadn't checked in a long while, only to find a letter from Gangnam. Although the envelope wasn't signed, Cheol-soo immediately recognized that it was Soo-jin's handwriting. The letter read, "Strangely enough, today she remembered many past events, recalling the convenience store where they first met and the baseball stadium where they used to date. Perhaps this is the last time she will remember these, so she couldn't help but write you this letter." In the past, to help her maintain her memory, Cheol-soo always asked her many common knowledge questions. This time, Cheol-soo wasn't with her, but she took the initiative to report to him. The highest mountain on the Korean peninsula is Baekdu Mountain, 2,744 meters high. The highest mountain in Korea is Hallasan, 1,950 meters high. Christmas is December 25th. She didn't get these wrong. Now she is truly fine, and she hopes Cheol-soo will forget her too, find another lover, and live happily for the rest of his life. Just remember in the future, don't always lose your temper, because his angry look is really frightening. Maybe Cheol-soo himself doesn't realize he is a good husband. As his wife, she thinks she hasn't mistaken him. At the end of the letter, Soo-jin begged Cheol-soo not to visit her, but Cheol-soo had already driven nonstop to the nursing home where she was. The nurse caring for Soo-jin mentioned that for a period of time, she needed assistance even to dress, but now she had recovered significantly. When she first arrived, Soo-jin brought many photos of the two of them, but later almost all were torn apart, leaving only the one that Cheol-soo saw. After saying this, the nurse led Cheol-soo to the balcony, where Soo-jin, who had lost all her memories, was sitting quietly and painting. Although the figures in the paintings were abstracted lines, each one faintly revealed Cheol-soo's shadow. The doctor once said that the human brain is truly miraculous. Perhaps everything seems normal one moment, but the next moment, all memories can be forgotten. Yet, deep in some tiny corner of consciousness, remnants of familiar images still remain, unnoticed even by oneself. As it was time for a meal, the nurse led Soo-jin and Cheol-soo to the dining room. Looking at her former most intimate lover, who now completely did not recognize him, Cheol-soo felt both pain and pity. Suddenly, Soo-jin caught a whiff of a familiar scent, but no matter how hard she tried to recall, her memory remained blurred. At this moment, Cheol-soo was already in tears. This was the scent of his daily used perfume, and also the love potion that once deeply captivated Soo-jin. In fact, Cheol-soo had recently lost interest in taking care of himself, until he received Soo-jin's message, which prompted him to hurriedly tidy himself up. Moreover, this scent carried extraordinary significance for them. After the meal, accompanied by medical staff, Cheol-soo took Soo-jin back to the convenience store where they first met, recreating the scene of that day. Because of that moment just now, he realized that familiar people and things might awaken the deeply hidden memories of Soo-jin. So Cheol-soo also invited Soo-jin's parents and his own mother to play the roles of the store clerk and the customer, respectively, to jointly reenact this reunion. As expected, although Soo-jin was not able to recognize her close relatives immediately, her inner feelings were clearly touched, and she unknowingly had tears in her eyes. In the years that followed, Soo-jin still did not fully recover her past memories, but through Cheol-soo's daily companionship, when she received the wooden statue he carved himself, and when she heard him repeatedly say, "I love you," she repeatedly fell in love again with a man beside her.